Right now, we examine a 24-year-old murder, two of them actually, from 1994. A 14-year-old girl violently killed. She disappeared from her home in Beaver County, Pennsylvania, and ended up in the Berlin Lake woods 2 hours away. Her body was a few hundred yards from the body of another teenage girl, also brutally killed. Are they connected? We'll go through the facts investigators have poured over through the years. The most important question is, can you help solve the decades-old murders of Sarah Boehm and Kathryn Menendez? Rochester Township, a community in Beaver County that runs along the Ohio River. A massive American flag welcomes you to town. 1994, a time before smartphones and tablets. 14-year-old Sarah Bane lived in a quiet neighborhood in the hills on Mellon Avenue. She lived with her brother and mother, who was separated from her father. Neighbors remember Sarah. They remember the search. They didn't want to go on camera, but they remember her shyness.
She was quiet. She was reserved. Some people have described her as always having her head down and would never look you in the eye. Kind of a very shy, intimidating person, like easily intimidated person.
As a girl, Sarah Bane walked these streets every day. This is the road that she took to get to school. This was her playground for 14 years. But at 14 years old, she walked out of that door and walked down these streets for the last time.
The night of the disappearance, when Sarah walked out of the house, July 14th at 10:45 p.m.
Retired FBI agent Tom Carter has worked on Sarah Boehm's case since 2000. He continues to investigate it to this day. That night, Sarah told her brother she was going to her friend Jennifer's house. A neighbor reported seeing her walking that night.
Whether she actually was intending to go to her friend's house, because her friends later told investigators that she wasn't welcome down there because her house was full of company. So where Sarah went that night, you know, that's the disputed fact that nobody knows where she went. She was last seen here by her brother. Mom was at work.
But no one knew she was missing right away. Sarah had a counseling appointment the next day. She didn't go. That's when her family realized Sarah Boehm was missing.
And that's when the searches started. That's when Rochester Township PD was contacted that very next day.
Rochester Township's chief of police didn't want to be part of this story. The department investigated the missing persons case for years, until 1999, according to Beaver County District Attorney's Office Detective Tim Staub. That's when Rochester requested assistance from Beaver County.
After getting briefed and getting up to speed as far as the investigation went, then we got the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children involved, started a phone bank to call numerous leads across the United States. And leads had come in from virtually every state, and there are hundreds of them.
At this point, it's not a murder, it's still a missing person.
It's still a missing person. At that time, we had no idea the whereabouts of Sarah Bane.
In reality, Sarah Boehm's badly decomposed body was found a few months after her disappearance. She was violently murdered, but that body went unidentified.
We organized large sweeps of the area involving firefighters, emergency services personnel, and we swept all these woodlands down toward the high school, around everywhere.
Police brought in cadaver dogs to search her home. They excavated the basement of the house next door, also owned by her father. Walls were brought down. The family cooperated with it all, Staub says. Did you guys believe at this point that she was still alive?
We didn't know. We didn't know. I can recall myself receiving photographs through email and through the computer of people who looked like Sarah Boehm. Even with the age progression of 6 years, they still looked like they could be.
But they weren't. Another retired detective who worked with Staub searched the Jane Doe network in 2000. A body was found in November 1994 near Berlin Lake. He was never identified. Detective Kim Clements, who couldn't meet us for an interview, looked into it. Investigators got DNA from Sarah's mother, and it matched the unidentified remains. Sarah Boehm was found at last.
In a box in the Cuyahoga County Coroner's Office in Cleveland, her remains. I actually remember Kim and I then going to get the remains, and then we drove the remains down
to the Washington, D.C. area, a second autopsy at the Department of Defense, a search for any marks or chips on her bones to help them determine what killed her. They found nothing.
Initial autopsy, it was manner of death was through violent homicide with unknown cause.
We made our way to Fewtown Road near Berlin Lake, the Portage County side, 2 hours away from Sarah Boehm's home. Somehow, some way, Sarah Bane made a similar journey. Whether she was alive or dead when it happened, we don't know.
We believe that a perfectly healthy 14-year-old girl didn't walk over to Ohio or end up in this park and just died of natural causes. So obviously somebody had a hand in causing her death. How that was caused, we don't know.
In a chilling twist, Sarah Boehm was interviewed by WTAE in Pittsburgh 10 months before her disappearance. She claimed someone had tried to abduct her. This is that interview.
I was just thinking, oh God, please don't let him kill me. I just had a thought in my head I was going to be killed.
We met with the Portage County Sheriff's Office, which responded on November 4th, 1994.
Hunters called in, advised that they had located what they believed to be a human corpse, skeleton. Basically, there was still some hair and whatnot, but it appeared as though she had been there for quite a while, at least a few months, to be in that condition.
In fact, Agent Carter tells me he believes her body ended up there not long after she disappeared. Detective Beth Hurd with Portage County showed us the area Sarah was found.
She was found, this road goes all the way back. It's close to a mile. She was located at the very end of this road, actually off the roadway.
Her body was found very close to where the body of 17-year-old Alliance girl Kathryn Menendez's body was found just months before.
There was a missing persons report filed with Alliance PD on August 23rd of '94.
Unlike Boehm, Menendez's family didn't have to wait years to learn their loved one was killed.
She was found out here the morning of August 25th by an oil well worker that was out checking his wells.
And it was gruesome. At the Portage County Sheriff's Office, we went over case files for Boehm and Menendez. They told us not to look at the crime scene photos. The Ohio Attorney General's website says Menendez, who went by Kathy, was strangled, stabbed, and bludgeoned to death. She was murdered 1 to 2 days before she was found. The AG site says she was likely killed elsewhere, her body dumped here.
Back this road, probably 2 to 3/10 of a mile back on the right-hand side, there's an oil well driveway.
Her clothes were never found, neither were Boehm's.
Fewtown Road runs alongside of Willow Creek. Willow Creek branches off from Berlin Lake. Fewtown Road is a dead end, but we don't know how far back it goes. As you can see, it's gated off. It's overgrown. That wasn't the case back in 1994. There was no gate, and this road was very well traveled. The Portage County Sheriff's Department tells us a lot of people went back in these woods to party and hang out. But when Boehm and Menendez's bodies were recovered, the Army Corps of Engineers made the decision to gate this road off so that no one could travel down it.
You can still walk it though, so we did. Menendez was 3 years older than Boehm. Boehm lived 2 hours away. Menendez lived in Alliance, just 10 minutes down the road.
She was a habitual runaway. She'd been reported as a runaway 17 prior times up to the day that she was located here. She ran with kind of a rowdy crowd. So there were people to investigate, talk to, try to run down where she had been, since August 23rd to August 25th when she was located out here.
She was reported as a runaway, but this time, that was not the case.
Were you guys able to figure out from the day that she went missing any of the steps that she'd taken before her body was found?
Not really. I mean, just like she kind of disappeared in the afternoon on the 23rd in Alliance and couldn't really put anybody with her.
Like Boehm, Menendez's killer has never been found.
We still have some ideas, and they're not exhausted yet. We've actually interviewed people in the last couple years on this case, so I mean it's not an inactive case.
Because Boehm's case crossed state lines, the FBI and Agent Carter were brought in 2000 when it was realized the unidentified body might belong to Boehm. So the Portage County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, and the Beaver County District Attorney's detectives were all working on these cases. 2 teenage girls murdered and dumped. Agent Carter thinks Boehm's body was already here when Menendez was found.
The crime scenes were similar, if that's what you're asking. I mean, the crime scenes, because if there's no clothing found at either scene.
The question is there a connection? It depends on who you ask.
Do you feel like it's too much of a coincidence that there wouldn't be?
I think that you have 2 teenage girls found in a remote rural park in Ohio. The chances of them not being related somehow, some way, would be difficult to explain not. I believe that they probably are somehow related, but the 2 backgrounds of the 2 girls are completely different. I mean, we have no relation to Ohio from Sarah Boehm here whatsoever. So how a 14-year-old girl got from Beaver County, Ohio to from Beaver County, Pennsylvania to rural Ohio, nobody knows.
Have you guys found any type of link that would connect them
No,
or their deaths?
no.
Do you think there may be one?
As far as we've looked everything over the years, we cannot find a link between the 2.
Agent Carter believes the answer lies somewhere near Berlin Lake and Fewtown Road. It's an area frequented by hunters and fishermen.
It's a rural park out in the middle of rural Ohio. I mean, I believe that you have to know that park. If you're from that area, you probably know that park, but if you're not from that area, you're probably not very familiar with that park.
Without a factual connection, the murders of Menendez and Boehm are treated as parallel investigations.
The FBI had actually put up the billboard on 62, Route 62, in reference to both girls, you know. Does anybody have any information?
A reward of $5,000 for information leading to an arrest and conviction is active to this day. Let's head back to Rochester Township. We made a stop in Sylvania Hills Cemetery, where rows and rows of loved ones are buried. Boehm's body was finally positively identified in 2003, and this is where she rests. A small red felt heart sits inside a capsule at her gravesite.
I have no idea who put it here, but I never disturb it. I look at it and put it back.
Agent Carter makes his way here every now and then.
And no one's ever weeded it either except me.
How many times have you been back here?
Over the years, I mean, I've come here frequently. I mean, probably 20, 25 times, you know, just to come pay my respects and see if there's anything left that may be of evidentiary value.
To look around and think about the case and what he still needs to find.
Justice for Sarah. We're standing here at her grave. I mean, justice. Sarah Bane deserves justice. I mean, whoever killed her deserves to pay for what they did.
In 2011, a new bit of very important evidence was released to the public. A note. One that was found just after Sarah Bane disappeared. Family members found it July 17th, 1994, 3 days after she was last seen.
Under her neatly made bed, under her pillow, in an envelope, to whoever cares on top of it, and it said, you know, it's a 2-page piece, 2 pages of piece of paper with her writing that we confirmed was her writing.
A copy was given to the Rochester police. Her mother kept the original. When Beaver County and the FBI got involved, they got the original.
It had 5 set of fingerprints on it, which are unknown to this day whose prints are on it.
They know who those prints don't belong to.
We ran the fingerprints for elimination for the family members, which was not the family members' prints.
There are some abnormalities about the note.
2 different inks, 2 different types of paper. What do you guys draw? What conclusion do you guys draw from that?
I'm not sure. I mean, Sarah could have placed that together under her pillow, or someone else could have placed that together under her pillow. We're not sure how it got under the pillow. We don't know.
The note wasn't addressed to anyone. Inside were the thoughts of a young teen.
Don't try to find me. You know, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. It's not your fault. Maybe I'll be a cardiologist or a musician. She talks about an older boyfriend. To this day, that older boyfriend's never been identified.
That older boyfriend, Boehm wrote, was abusive.
To this day, I've never been able to answer the very simple question about the note. Who was she writing it to? I don't know that. I mean, if that was a note, then who was it directed to? If you read the note, I've had people look at it. I had psychologists look at it. I've had forensic psychologists look at it. And you ask yourself, who was this 14-year-old girl writing this note to? I don't know.
It almost seems like young Sarah Boehm was writing in a journal. Agent Carter says it's possible that the 2 pages that did not lead into each other are from a journal.
And I think there's a possibility some of the friends that I've interviewed, or at least one friend that I interviewed, told me that she did keep a journal. That journal's never been found.
If Sarah didn't put that note there herself, someone else did.
Maybe somebody out there knows.
There's the matter of Sarah's personality, a quiet, shy girl with few friends. Remember, neighbors say she didn't look anyone in the eye and wasn't outgoing.
Did you ever believe that there were any facets of her personality or things that led her to behave that way, or trauma that she had maybe experienced?
I went to Children's Hospital and talked to a children's psychologist and presented those facts, what you just described, to them, and they concluded, without having obviously been able to interview Sarah Bane, that she did exhibit some traits of possibly being molested.
The investigation continues progressing. Agent Carter worked with Detective Kim Clements as partners.
We worked it jointly. I mean, we went to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We presented both cases to the Behavioral Science Unit at FBI together.
New investigators looking for clues or a connection between Boehm and Menendez. Not as much like Criminal Minds as you might think. Carter says they presented at a roundtable discussion.
That was 2010, 2011.
What did they say?
What did they say? We presented the case. They gave some leads. We followed the leads, and here we are today.
But through that effort, they found money to reinvestigate the crime scenes back off Viewtown Road, where both girls were found, 21 years later.
We went back in 2015. We brought the evidence response team from Pittsburgh FBI and the evidence response team from Cleveland FBI to basically go back and redo both crime scenes of Sarah Boehm and Kathryn Menendez.
They were looking for any remnants of evidence that may be left. They found a few things, but nothing to help the cases. Through the years, while Agent Carter and Beaver County detectives kept working on Boehm's case and looking into a possible connection with Menendez, Detective Beth Hurd focused on Menendez.
Today, well, it's still open. We still have, a couple of leads that we have been following up with. It's just a matter of, somebody coming forward or somebody finally breaking down and confessing to it, really. So.
Do you think there are those people out there in this area who know what happened to her?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that at least more than one person knows what's happened to her. But people want to protect people. People don't like to be, the guy that came forward. So sometimes you get some leverage.
I'm not going to stand here and say it's another case, because it's not. It's not another case.
Agencies hours apart continue looking for justice for these young girls.
The case also involves possibly involves a kidnapping, and involves something, could involve a serial killer.
Have there been any other links or any similarities to any other murders outside of these two that would lead you to believe that it was the work of a serial killer?
Well, there are. When you look through the record, there are people who you could say possibly. But again, it's so broad. I'm not. I wish I could narrow it down. We've been trying to narrow this case down for 20 years, and it's just one of these cases that it kind of defies being narrowed down at this point.
For Agent Carter, this case in some ways defines his current professional path. He retired from the FBI in April after 27 years.
I think anytime a young girl goes missing or is found dead, you can't not feel somehow obviously emotionally attached and bad for that family and bad for the child itself.
But he didn't retire altogether. He's now a detective with the Allegheny County DA's office.
This case has gotten under my skin. I mean, it affects me. Like I think about it all the time. I mean, it would be nice personally to close this case.
His bosses and the Beaver County DA allow him to continue to work on solving Boehm's murder.
Is it primarily because you want to continue investigating this case?
That's a big reason why, yes. Yeah, I mean, this case is, to say it gets under an investigator's skin, I mean, we all have that one case that we wish we could solve.
He rereads old reports, writes down what he wants to re-examine.
It's still actively being looked at. I'm not going to stand here and say, we're this close. I mean, we're asking for the public's help. Any little bit would be helpful. We don't take any lead lightly. If you call in, I'll guarantee you that I will look into it.
He says Boehm's disappearance and eventual murder cases have been covered extensively in the Pittsburgh media market, but not so much in Ohio. He thinks that's where the answer may lie.
What I really need is new leads from this interview.
He also hopes for someone to step forward who knows more.
Are there people that you've talked with that you feel like know more than they'll tell you?
Are there people that I talk with that know more? Yes, I do believe that. And for whatever reason, personal reasons, they don't want to talk to us. If that's the case, then I would ask them to call back in and talk.
He wants new information, new tips, a new lead. People may have their memory jogged. Something may pop into your head that you might think is inconsequential.
Somebody killed a 14-year-old little girl and possibly a 17-year-old little girl over in Ohio. So if you know anything out there, then please call in.
Justice for Sarah Boehm and Kathryn Menendez. The number for the Pittsburgh FBI is on your screen. It's also going to be posted in the web article for this story. If you have information or a lead for investigators to look into for either case, please give them a call. For WKBN 27 First News, I'm Mandy Noell.